probably should start with the introduction, but you've seen the slides with all our faces, kind of epic slide for a long time because we're having a speech as the third speakers here. So I will go straight to the some specific points about our discussion. And first of all, we decided to have this panel discussion and selected the topic about shared responsibility model in cloud to answer two questions. The first one is why understanding of the model matters, and the second one, why we're talking about it for such wide audience. So it's relatively simple. First of all, cloud adoption in the last 10 years is skyrocketing, and under cloud adoption, I mean, it's kind of obvious that organizations are creating new workloads in the cloud to experience the cost effectiveness, flexibility, and robustness of the cloud environments. But companies are also building hybrid environments. A significant portion of all the customers of the cloud. And as a consequence, security breaches in cloud are also on the rise because it's a completely new landscape for the most companies. They're working in an environment where everything is virtualized, when everything is made by some other provider. And it's, if you've never been in such a situation, it's difficult to understand which part of the system are owned by your site and which parts are owned by cloud provider. This understanding is actually facilitated by really strong compliance and regulatory pressure coming from the United States, coming from European Union, GDPR, forces all the organization to care about the data of users that they store, how they store it, which kind of data they store, and everything. So shared responsibility in cloud can become a shared success, or it can become a shared fate. And this is the topic of our panel discussion here. For those of you who are not familiar with shared responsibility model, we have a quick diagram over here. It's basically separation between responsibilities of you as a customer and you as a cloud provider. Could you please raise your hands who are not familiar with this concept of shared responsibility? Okay, I have a, don't be shy. I have a few hands raised here. Okay, so it's just a few. Simplifying, responsibility for security in the cloud is part of the customer, and responsibility for security of the cloud is part of the cloud provider. And here on the diagram, you can actually see the difference. Moving forward to the core pillars of security, and I believe Alex is going to talk about it.
Yeah, let me start. But before we start, guys, I have a question to you. Dima, Kiryl, what do you think? If you are lucky enough, do you really should take care about shared responsibility?
You're visually confused.
Yeah, I am actually, because like I tend to tell that you should, because like everything from my experience tells that you should not trust anything or anyone by default. But the other side, also based on experience, tells me that if you're lucky enough, you probably shouldn't, because cloud providers, no matter which, they are trying to do their best to provide you pretty good defaults. And that's a great idea and a great advantage. But it also flips and moves you to the other side when you believe that defaults are great until it doesn't. So my answer would be you should always be aware, even if you think you're good.
My answer probably will be a lot more short. And my personal opinion is that luckiness is a trait that doesn't last long. Until the guy, such as Roy, will come near your system, you might be lucky, but after it, I don't think so.
I agree with you guys, because in my opinion, if you develop your own pet project, probably a lucky approach will be good enough for you. But as soon as we speak about the company projects and products, that's something that we cannot scale. And I also have two questions to the audience today. The first one, I want to know how many security engineers do we have here? Guys, please raise your hands, and we'll do the same as you. Okay.
Maybe not specifically security engineers, but someone who has security in their job responsibilities in, I don't know, in expectations from their role.
Okay. Yeah, of course. All engineers are somewhat interested in security because other case probably there is a non-zero chance that they could be fired, right?
Yeah, and the second question will be related maybe more to your company. And please raise the hands those who doesn't have a dedicated security engineer or dedicated security team in your company. And security function is fully distributed across the engineers.
Don't be shy. We are not
Okay.
going to ask you what is the company name.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, guys. Talking about my opinion and my view on a shared responsibility model, I want to share with you my experience and my approach, how I to define what is that and how I use this model during day-to-day job. And as Kiryl mentioned earlier, why do we need to know about shared responsibility model? As for me, there are two main points here. The first one is compliance. We can be surprised one day when someone will come to us and start asking not so convenient questions, and we will realize that we are responsible for something that we never did before. And another point is related security incidents. When something will happen and we will try to conduct our own investigation, we realize that we did not do our homework. So in order to be aware, in order to be prepared, I define the next, I would say, like a formula, yes, how we can describe the shared responsibility model. First of all, it consists of three key components: inventory, ownership, and responsibility. What do I mean here? When we have an application that we deployed in production, we need to understand and realize that this application has dependency. I mean, networking, physical service, databases, storage services, whatever. And as soon as we understand what assets are included in our application, we can clarify who owns these assets. Yes, and that's about the ownership. If I own something, I'm responsible for that. If I do not own physical server that is located in a data center, probably my cloud provider is responsible for that. And as soon as I understand what your service consists of, you understand your assets, you understand what assets you own, it's quite easier to understand what are you responsible for, where your responsibility comes to play. And Kiryl, can you switch to another one? Yeah. And I want to highlight some pretty clear example how it works in real life. For instance, we are going to deploy some kind of workload in our production environment. We are going to use Kubernetes for that purposes, and we have several options here. The first one, we can set up, for instance, EC2 instances. We can deploy Kubernetes from scratch and be responsible for EC2 instances, for control plane of Kubernetes, for data plane of Kubernetes, for the workloads we are going to deploy, for all this stuff. It will be our responsibility, and we should take care about its security. Another way, we can use AWS Elastic Kubernetes service. That means that we do not manage control plane. We delegate this stuff to our cloud provider and reduce the scope of ownership. We do not take care about the security, except, I will say, some upgrade procedure. And another approach we can use here, we can use Elastic Container Service. When we don't care about worker nodes, about control plane at all, and completely focus on workloads, only on our workloads. And here is the first key takeaway I want to share with you, that talking about shared responsibility model, we should focus on what we own, and we should to do some steps forward to reducing the scope of our ownership. And I even wanted to share with you one example. I had a conversation recently with some security vendor who is responsible for scanning Docker images in order to reduce on unused stuff like packages, libraries that will not use during the production runtime. And I ask him, why do you just focus on container security? What about EC2 instances? They also can be vulnerable. And they say that more and more customers nowadays do not want to take care about Kubernetes. They start using more and more elastic container service in order to reduce the scope of ownership, in order to reduce the operational overhead their team has. Because when some incident can happen, when some auditor will come to your company, it will be much easier to say, we do not own that. We delegate this to our cloud provider, and that's it.
Yeah, and actually talking about AKS on AWS, how many of you are aware that working nodes are actually your responsibility and security of them? Okay, I see one hand raised. So that's probably the indication the topic about shared responsibility is not so obvious, and it was a good one. We actually briefly discussed why we were talking about it. Let's move to the cases. Today we're going to have a chat about 3 cases. The first one is Verizon, related some vendor management failure goes to data exposure. The second one is Uber, probably is the heftiest fine I ever saw, made by someone, well, not issued to someone. And the third one is LastPass, the very complicated case that affected the company that receives money for security, physically. Okay, let's have a chat about Verizon.
Okay, I will start with the easiest one. Guys, they were kind to me and gave me the easiest case. So you are mostly aware, like, first of all, we are trying to give a talk and discussion, and we hope for discussion and not for just presentation, in order to be applicable for all cloud providers. We're using AWS as an example, but sometimes we're using AWS as an example. It doesn't mean that it's only applicable to AWS. It's also applicable to Google Cloud, to Azure, to Oracle Cloud, and to all other providers. So please do understand that this is like a very common stuff. Around this Verizon incident, I'm trying to describe here. You probably understand, and Roy was talking about scenes which are publicly accessible to the internet, and Bar was talking about publicly accessible scenes. You don't want to be there. Even if you do understand that you can manage a very long, weird hash-like S3 bucket name and make it public, someone's gonna find it out anyway, and they will find it out quite quickly. So please do not believe in this security by obscurity principle once you're doing this stuff. What happened to Verizon was actually very trivial. If you need to describe it in a few words, they had publicly accessible S3 bucket with personal information, which hits hard, which always hits hard, especially if you're a big company. The interesting part here is that this is their incident, but they were not directly responsible for this incident, because what happened actually, they had third-party vendor which provided them some kind of services. In this particular case, it was call center, and they were managing calls, and they had some logs, and they were providing some kind of analytics, and all this data ended up in publicly accessible S3 bucket, which means that thousands and hundreds of thousands of records, of user records, and it was very, very sensitive because there were phone numbers and PIN codes, so you can actually impersonate the user if you get this information. They were accessible to all the world. So I would like to give you a question, like, who do you think is responsible for this kind of stuff when you are, as a company, asking for someone to provide you services and they mess with security, they mess it badly, but the incident affects you? Who do you think is responsible? Is it your responsibility or their responsibility?
That's pretty much it. Both.
It's actually both, yes. Most likely, yes. What could Verizon, for this example, could done better? There are, in industries, there are big players, big vendors who take security very seriously. And for example, for every third-party vendors, they do ask them to live in their infrastructure. In this case, they simply tell them, like, we are owning it, we are responsible. If Verizon, for example, provided S3 buckets for the third-party services and tells them, you could upload your logs or whatever, and we're going to give you an access, it would be a different story. But they kind of delegated that. It was not legally their responsibility, but it hit them hard. So what I'm trying to bring as this example, you could be indirectly responsible for sin, but it could hit you hard. So even if you're thinking that buying some third-party SaaS or buying some services or collaborating with someone makes responsibility and transfers this responsibility to their side, I encourage you to think twice, because it always ends badly.
Which lessons can we extract from this story? Well, probably a lot of you are working with companies that are working with vendor companies. And in my opinion, you should treat them and security in their organization in the same manner, with the same strictness as the security in organization of yours. Or you might end up in the same situation as this company have been. And very important small disclaimers that I forgot to mention. We are not trying to roast these companies, or we're not trying to blame them for it. We're grateful for providing the very transparent and open information about the incidents that had place. And we are taking the lessons, we're learning them from others' failures. This is a hand raised.
Yeah, it's yeah.
The short answer is no. The long answer is no. We can do this, and that.
Yeah.
This is the only way how you can mitigate.
It's very good comment, and I'm actually with you, because from legal perspective you can tell, no, that's they fucked up. That's not us, that they are. But you know, if people who are not security experts, they're going to be reading news titles. Majority of them, they are not going to dig into the article itself. They're going to be reading vendor A had an incident, and they're not going to be aware that there was a third-party vendor B which made a mistake which affected vendor A. So legally, you're going to be absolutely great. But from your brand awareness, from PR, from your image perspective, you're going to be badly affected. So you simply don't want to be there. Yeah. Yes.
Probably we can. You're right. When we make decisions that we are going to use with some third-party provider, third-party company, from this point we accept the risk. Yes, that something can go wrong. That's the first point. Another point, I know that legal in legal language we have some kind of documents we can sign, like business associate agreement, master associate agreement, like in GDPR we have, when we have a controller who owns the data, processor, sub-processor, when we delegate some data to third-party provider. But again, In case of incident will happen, from legal part we will be protected, yes, and we can, I don't know, go to the our third-party vendor and clarify our relationship in a legal area. But from I would say from reputation standpoint, yes, from our customer safety standpoint, we will give some probably penalties that incident has happened, and it's a risk. That's a risk that we cannot accept during our vendor management process. But also, I know that some companies are more friendly when you are going to choose them like a third-party vendor. You can launch something like due diligence process, and they will allow to assess them from security standpoint. They will allow them to conduct an audit. But it depends. I'm not a professional here, but I 100% know that this exists in real cases.
I just gonna add one more comment here. Like, if you are having some kind of services from a third party, it's legally difficult to ask them to give you an access or to go through audit. But what you can do, you can try to approach it from the different angle. You can invite them into your infrastructure and ask them to live in what you are controlling. That's why on-premises software is so popular, especially in enterprise level, because they are just trying to minimize the risk. They are inviting you into your cloud, and they are telling, okay, you are going to be living here. We're going to be trying to do our best to manage security based on our acceptance level, not on your acceptance level. But that's difficult. There is no easy way here. You're choosing your heart. That's it.
Guys,
thank you very much for participating in the discussion. This is the way how we like it to be built. And yes, thank you very much for clarifying the compliance nuances.
I also wanted to discuss a little bit more. We said that both parties are responsible for this case, like a client and the cloud provider. And I have a question to you guys. What cloud provider is able to do in such cases in order to protect their clients? What ideas?
Good defaults is great answer.
Yeah, so amplifying, yeah, they can provide good defaults on specific services that will enhance the security.
And talking about simple storage service only in 2023, AWS has implemented block public access as a default configuration.
Oh, yes.
It happened only 1 year ago. And for all these years, the same for Azure? Yeah.
So, as I mentioned, we are not trying to blame AWS. It's
or any other
applicable
cloud.
to all cloud vendors.
But there is a second key takeaway here that we wanted to highlight, that we should not rely on default security measures that the cloud provider provide for us. Sometimes then cannot be in place. Yeah, we should be aware about that.
On that note, I think we can move to the second case.
Yeah, we need to speed up.
No, we're good. But you're already holding the mic. I mean, why not?
Okay,
It's
okay.
fine.
The second question is related Uber, and this case is connected with AWS key leakage. What has happened during this case? Just a short intro. Attackers get some kind of credential databases, exposed usernames and password. They just enumerated public repos in order to get an access to these repos. And one of these repo belonged to the developer from the Uber. And when they analyzed the structure of the files, they discovered AWS keys that were used in order to get an access to AWS S3 bucket. And that's the short description of what has happened. But our goal here is to clarify what is the problem is highlighted here, and how we can deal with that. Yes, in my opinion, the problem is related identity and access management. And when we are speaking about identity and access management, in particular, in any case, the responsibility will be on client side. That's a client responsibility to set up authentication, authorization, and all this related stuff. And this case happens 8 years ago, but the problem is still actual. Kiryl, could you switch to another slide? Yeah, we have statistics that 46% of the companies still use long-lived credentials. What does it mean? It's like AWS access key and secret key. And the reason is pretty clear. It's like an old school approach. It's much easier to understand that when you have some kind of keys, tokens, and you can use them, you can integrate system between one another. But modern approach says us not to use some long-lived credentials. Let's use temporary credentials that we can assume, for instance, in a cloud provider, the role, and this role will provide us temporary credentials that will expire soon. But still, that's not a case that is used by most of the companies. We still have a lot of long-lived credentials that must be rotated, and that's still a problem that cause a lot of incident around us. And another problem that is located here near with long-lived credentials, the problem that is related how do we manage access, what permissions do we grant. Have you ever seen cloud provider permission policy that you can define when you need to grant an access? You need to specify the principal, the resource to what you are going to grant an access, effect allow, deny. You can specify permissions and conditions, maybe something else. But when you try to specify permissions that you need, and you will open the list of the permissions in the documentation, you will discover that there are, I don't know, 20, 30, 40 different permissions that you can put in this permission policy. And what exactly permissions do I need to use? I try this one, my integration doesn't work. I try this two, it doesn't work again. And what I will do? I will use wildcards because it will simplify and streamline the process how to solve my task. And this is another problem why we have a lot of incidents that are related identity and access management. And in my opinion, there is a gap from our cloud providers as well, how they provide us an opportunity to manage an access. They provided us a huge flexibility because we have different permissions and we can set up them. But again, it's pretty hard to use all the stuff in order to set up what exactly you need and keep your configuration secure. And I wanted to say you a real case example. When you can set up permission policy, let's assume you have simple notification service, like a topic where you can put your messages and someone can subscribe for this topic in order to grab these messages. And you specify the policy that anyone can subscribe to this topic and read the messages from there, but with one condition, just one condition. The destination where these messages from this topic will be forwarded to must contains @example.com, like your corporate domain. And at the first glance, it looks like, okay, maybe this policy is good enough. We can use forward the messages from this topic only to our corporate emails. Okay, maybe that's the case. But what if I will say you that we can specify an HTTP endpoint? We can subscribe for this topic, specify like destination endpoint external URL that will belong to the attacker, and just use this @example.com like a path of URL in this endpoint. And all messages from this topic will be forwarded to external HTTP endpoint and all your data will be leaked. That's why I wanted to highlight that the complexity of this topic related permission management. And in order to sum up all that I said just now, I will say that there are a lot of issues, there are a lot of problems you can face with, but if you understand that you own something and you're responsible for its security, in order to protect your company, in order to protect its data, you should be aware about actual threats that you can face with. There are not so many of them, but when you know that long-lived credentials and excessive permissions are a problem in nowadays, probably you need to spend a little much more time in order to harden the configuration of the service you are going to integrate within your environment.
I do have a small comment here. It's like dealing with roles, permissions, and making them efficient is hard. It's definitely hard. I believe, like, guys, if you ever tried to do it for something more complex and complicated than a pet project, you've seen it. And you are like fighting this hard for a while, then you writing a star, wild card, good to go, I'm gonna fix it later. You probably even create like to-do comment or fix me or whatever. And this later moment, it never happens, actually. It's like once you're written to do, once you're written fix me, you accept it, the risks. Permissions are hard. Dealing with consequences of a breach is also hard. So you just choosing your heart.
That's true. And in your opinion, dear audience, which steps can we take to not end up in the same place? Obviously, there is a slide with short-lived and long-lived credentials, but probably there is something more. How don't be exposed to the vulnerability related to object storage, such as S3? Some ideas? Avoid using it.
Great idea.
Yeah,
Brilliant.
that's actually a brilliant answer, because
Yes.
you're reducing the surface of attack. You're using less services, less surface. You're using less users, less surface, less permissions. Amazing. If you can end up with one public endpoint, great. It's a perfect place to be.
Single sign-on, zero trust approach. We haven't talked about it yet, but essentially when you are trying to access object storage, you should be authenticated only by your credentials, especially if they're long-lived. You should be also authenticated by the network you're coming from, and that essentially forms this layer of zero trust, because we're not authenticating you by single principal, we're doing it by multiple. Really great point.
May I ask a question, like, to the audience? In your companies, when you're working, please raise hands who has some kind of rotation policy set.
Whoa. I experienced a lot less people to raise hands, honestly.
Yeah, I started thinking about, like, my default approach to security is...
Sorry?
If you are forced, like the simplest example, if you're forced to change your password every X days. For services as well, yeah. My default approach to security is that no one cares about security, but based on this specific audience, I started like rethinking this default approach.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
So you're telling that bad guys, they are outside, yeah?
I haven't mentioned, though, probably because of the people who are going outside, but we actually have for each of us 2 invitations for the after party. Why do we do an invitation for the after party? Because we basically have a table, and well, it has limit of places. And for the participants of the discussion, for the best question, and in general for activity, we're going to reward you with this invitation. So,
Kiryl, we have a guy with a raised hand here.
Yes,
go for it. One, two, yeah.
Yes, you need a rules.
I'm absolutely with you. Like, the best approach is the simplest approach, which doesn't force people who supposed to follow this approach to think ideally. So I completely agree with you. Around too frequent rotation, there is a very famous article you can Google for. It's called Moscow 2. I'm going to spoil it for you a little bit. There was one was a very, very high title guy who used the password for his email service as a word Moscow. He was hacked. So he changed the password to Moscow 1.
Oh.
He was hacked again, and he changed it to Moscow 2. There is an article about it. So you never underestimate what people gonna do if they just forced to do it. If you didn't explain them why they are doing it, what are the rules? If you just enforce them to change the password, the guy changed the password twice. He did it. We cannot blame him. But did he really? I don't think so. So you need to provide as good as you can for the consumers. And consumers could be people in your organization. They could be your customers. They could be yourself in the future. Yourself in the future, if it's like you're providing a wild card. You are completely okay today, but in a month, you're going to suffer. So you actually transferred suffering for yourself in the future. So if you do your job good, ideally, majority of these cases, they are not going to happen. But you should try to think about how to minimize the blast radius if it's going to happen, how to minimize the mental overload for them, how to make it easy.
I see another hand raised. Go for it. Right.
It's absolutely true. You can use like positive reinforcement or you can get negative one. Usually what happens if you are like CISO or the guy who is responsible for security, by default you will choose like stick with something people over the head if they are doing bad. And it's like, don't do it. You're not allowed to do it. Not like that. That's a default approach to prevent, but it's not feasible in a long-term perspective. As you mentioned, if you're doing like a great job for people to be comfortable, to have it easy, like one password. If you are trying to create a new password, they suggest you the one. You can just tweak a slider. You can choose from few options. You do not need to generate something from your head. They're going to provide you a strong one. So that's an easiest approach. But yes, by default, it's true. You should try to have an empathy for users, and you try to provide their best.
It was not a hand raiser. Absolutely. And you probably want us to switch to it, don't you? Oh, yes.
I never told so. Never, ever. I'm just telling that one password. That's not LastPass. That's another company. This is first. Doing great job in specific area for suggesting good passwords.
passwords. Thank you, Katya.
So
if you
great.
want something to generate your passwords, host it yourself.
Whoa, this is a really deep thought.
Yes, exactly. You have Bitwarden that you can just host yourself. It can generate passwords for you. It will be the same as like 1Password, LastPass. Just use things that you can control. Using third party for passwords is dangerous, is scary.
We have pretty hardcore audience here. You want to keep it local. You want to keep it written on a piece of paper which you are not showing to anyone. And that's great. But you cannot try to extrapolate
Piece
this.
of paper is bad. It's bad, Dima. No piece of paper here. No piece of paper. We're not that kind of audience.
Memorize it, burn it. Yes, that's true. But majority of the people, they are not like that. They want easy. They want convenient. And you cannot blame them for it. They have tons of different things to be done. And hosting container in your own infrastructure which generates passwords based on the source of entropy only you know is amazing approach. I know probably I have enough fingers on one of my hands to describe people who I know who are doing it. And I do know a lot of security folks.
Dim, it sounds for me like we discussed the case when you're lucky enough. Yes, it's also not scalable. It's a good approach when you can manage this all the stuff on your own, but that's not scalable. And nowadays the solution must be convenient and secure. And also, Dima, I'm not completely agree with you about security today, that by default company starts with strict security rules. I will say from day to day, security department, security teams becomes more closer to their engineers, to their customers, and oriented more on collaborating matters rather than just secure everything that we have.
Absolutely.
So security inside the company transforms now.
I didn't want to offend anyone who is in charge of security like you, but that's how it was done by default. Like if you'll try to get back in years, like, I don't know, 20 years, something like that, there were no title like CISO. There were no title like security engineer. Nothing like that. It just started crystallizing in industry. And these folks, they were the ones who were guarding the company. They were providing like gateways and blocking stuff. And it started evolving, and now it is more around partnership and building like good policies. We've got platform engineering. It's like engineering for your engineering company. It's great. So we're going to get some kind of platform security maybe, or like just overall security going to be transformed into not punishing people, but teaching them, providing them good tools, cultivating good habits, making things better and easier for them rather than punish them and try to put them into position when they cannot move and not proceed. Yeah, I will be happy to live in this world.
Was set?
Maybe. I'm still not convinced. Like, I wish I live in a world where like everyone is aware of security, everyone is scared and wants to make things better. But we are not in this world. Sometimes you need to be the one who fights back, who enforces policies. I wish it's like, I don't know, our CEO always tells that security is like eating vegetables. Everyone knows that this is good, that this contributes to a long-term goal. How many of you eat vegetables? Yeah, you know that this is good. You're doing it only if like security incident happened, you've got some kind of regulations, you need to follow compliances, you understand that this is good, but it's always something on the top of the list. I wish we are in a better position, but I simply don't feel that we are in a really good position at the moment.
Dmitry was answering this question like 6 months ago on the very same stage. No. It's a very hot topic. Yes.
We can dive into this whole like very deep. My short answer would be I do not think that this will significantly change the landscape. It will make organization which cares about security more secure. It will make organization which do not care about security less secure. So it simply amplifies the state where you are. If you are below zero, it's going to be like
Deep underground.
deep underground. If you're above zero, you can simply achieve higher level easier. So, but I do not think that it's going to be a flip or significant change in the landscape. But that's my personal opinion.
I want to talking about AI, about machine learning and the security in particular. I would say that we have old school approach when we needed to define some kind of rules, policies, rule-based policies when we define that if some file will be executed or some I don't know kind of connection will be established, that will trigger an alert, and that's how we detect malicious threats in the past. And talking about now, we can educate the system. We can educate on a real data what is normal behavior and what is deviation, and detect such deviations using AI and machine learning. And it's significantly decrease the overhead on security team and allows you really to detect something that really matters from security standpoint.
It was said that we are not there at the moment. It actually depends what we understand under AI. If we're talking about LLMs, large language models, probably not. If we're talking about such algorithms as random cut forest, for instance, that used for anomaly detection, we're definitely there. But like probably many of you used anomaly detection for logs in services such as PandaDoc or any other popular platform for analyzing logs, or probably there are a lot of them in any case. And this is a very specific application of AI in security. Another thing is that the same algorithm could be used for fraud detection, for instance, and used like that since 90s. So we are kind of there, but if you're talking about LLMs, well, not. This is not the tool for security in classic approach, but we'll see. That time will tell us, because probably there is still a opportunity, capability for such models to be used in security environment.
Do we have anything else, or we're switching to the last one, because the last one is the most complex
Last one is LastPass.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a complicated story, so bear with me. I have supporting slides here. First of all, it's all started with the DevOps engineer of LastPass. And DevOps engineer, there are a lot of insinuations about it, not enough transparency around it. But in any case, his computer was infected with a malware. And this malware actually installed a keylogger to his machine. And using the keylogger, they managed to steal the credentials for AWS Cloud. Long-lived credentials, by the way. So LastPass is a security company. They're doing security. They're relatively great at it. And they've managed to understand that DevOps PC, DevOps laptop was compromised and perform the measures to mitigate the impact. And the key thing is that they haven't knew that keys, long-term credentials, were exposed. So they mitigated the malware, removed it and everything, performed an investigation, everything seems to be fine. All right. 3 months after, some unusual activity happened within the AWS network. They had analytics, they had a lot of measures in place to understand something's wrong going on, but they don't understand what's happening for a lot of reasons. First one is that the valid long-lived credentials were used by attackers simultaneously by the DevOps engineer who was trying to find an issue. So it was like a cat-mouse game. Second thing is that it was administrative level credentials, and they're allowed to perform pretty much any actions within cloud account. It's a security company, remember, so they have different perimeters, and they had the cloud environment for staging, for testing, and for non-prod purposes. Let's say prod was in a normal on-prem environment, and they've managed to figure out that something is going wrong, that credentials are exposed, rotate them only 2 weeks after, and during this time, remember that all the users' data should be on prod, right? But backups were in cloud. And attacker managed to extract all the passwords of the users. Passwords, of course, are encrypted. Passwords, of course, are encrypted by the user itself, by the master password. But there are rainbow tables. There are many other measures that could help attacker to decrypt the passwords, get to the crown, let's say, crown jewelry. And another thing is that metadata of users were also stolen, so it's much more easy for attacker to map the stolen passwords, encrypted stolen passwords to the physical users. So many LastPass users were affected, including myself. So I had to change like 200 passwords 2 years ago. And which lessons can we extract from this story? So first of all, not related to shared responsibility model, but still, device security is important in the same manner as cloud security. Second of all, long-lasting credentials should go. They should be the thing of the past. They're allowing attackers to do things that are impossible in federated environments, in environments with short-lived credentials, and with the environments with zero trust. And the credentials management. Obviously, that long-lived credentials, when they are rotated, couldn't be so bad, because I remind you, between the initial attack and the time when data from the S3 bucket was downloaded, was a time gap of 3 months. Like, if it was a credential management policy, secret rotation policy, meaningful one, obviously the keys were invalid at this moment. So a lot of lessons to learn, a lot of things that are happening. Even if you are a security company, they're extracted for themselves a lot of lessons. They improve their threat detection algorithms. They properly treated their credential management and everything. But reputation, very important thing that we touched during the Verizon case, was affected. No one trusts password manager, which is compromised once, and even if secure now, you still don't have the trust. I don't use a LastPass. I'm still not such advanced security geek that hosts the crypto container somewhere, but I use different password manager.
How much time did it take for you to change 200 passwords?
It was a different services. In some places it was simple. In some it was like requiring the phone call to factor and everything. Approximately 2 days, something like this, equivalent of full-time work. So yeah, it was the pleasure for me. So yeah, this one hit hard. Absolutely, it was a really great way to spend the weekend. Yeah.
Why don't industry impose actually, allow users to have this long-lived passwords? I know now there are many options like login with social networks, login with Google,
Legacy.
and so on.
To be honest, for many clouds, it's actually interest. It's actually a legacy reason, same as why certain object storages are exposed to the public access, because of the legacy reasons. Because short-lived credentials is a relatively new thing, like last 10 years, and most clouds are much older. This is my opinion. And also, so Hello drives probably the reason.
Yeah, that was me. Where was user behavior analytics in all this? Because actually, from what I'm hearing, is that whenever you compromise, basically, a script compromises certain laptop or it's malware, or it cracks even a key, right? Then it probably tries to propagate and log into a whole bunch of things. Good user behavior analytics and predictive monitoring practices, which should be common in pretty much every enterprise, should have already noticed that. It's quite easy to notice automated behavior versus actual user logging in. You see 100 logins to various services within 90 seconds. Yeah, that's a script, bro. You don't. Yeah, well, it's not a typo.
First of all, it was a targeted attack, and second of all, they've underestimated the initial impact. So when threat analytics has kicked in, the same physical person was trying to use the same credentials, understand what's happening. Therefore, it confused the threat analytics and confused real people, security investigators that were trying to understand what has happened. This was caused by the fact that initial impact was underestimated and the security systems on the device were tampered. So they hadn't had the proper analytics there. It's a sophisticated attack. It was targeted, and the attacker is still unknown. So
Yeah, but I'm saying if you look at it, you could make an organizational unit being focused as the one person who's actually having all these accesses, right?
yeah,
So if you
was a senior
monitor
DevOps.
how many logins that person is doing, regardless of the amount of services, but how many proper authentications or failed authentications, even the proper ones, which went through, you could notice that it's impossible for a single human being to log into 200 services at the same time, right? So that could have been easily checked if proper monitoring was in place.
There are insinuations around it that they hadn't had a threat analysis that
Yeah.
could analyze the volumetric indicators of their system, but it's just insinuations. They haven't exposed this part.
I do have a comment around anomaly detection and things like that. They do perfectly well in theory. They do well in real life, but there are some examples when you are suffering, like explicitly as we were telling about, you are choosing your permissions and then you end up with a wild card when you fed up with that. So real life example about anomaly detection. You have a guy who is doing his daily job and accessing 5 services. Then big release approaches and they want to, I don't know, deeply monitor Grafana dashboard, go to CloudWatch logs and do this stuff, and your anomaly detection software will be telling, no, this is not usual behavior, this is anomaly. This person never accessed Grafana dashboard ever, or they will never try to do CloudWatch logs for past 6 months. So it's going to be an alert. Alerts, they are pretty useless in the big organizations because too many of them, you need to react on them. Or it could be blocked by default, unless figured out. So the person is going to be blocked. They're gonna approach someone, tells that it's a legitimate behavior, unblock me. And I'm seeing two examples, like two possible passes from here. The first one is that responsible team will evaluate if it's like reasonable. Because for this particular example, the guy was still using this password, but this password was also used by attackers. So it could be an attempt to mask unusual behavior with the usual behavior. So they kind of need to investigate, which means that it's not going to happen fast. This is the first example. Second example, they react to incoming requests with, okay, you asked, you given. And in this case, your anomaly detection value falling down to close to 0, because if the team gives go decision for every request, it's a pretty useless system. So it could work. It could mitigate a lot of issues, but it's not a silver bullet. You cannot sell it like do anomaly detection or do X or do Y and you're gonna be safe. You can combine 5, 6, 10 different approaches, different tools, different techniques, and you can still gonna be attacked by the guy like Roy, who gonna be curious and poke different holes and gonna find the only one which is unpatched. So for security, you need to be you as secure as the weakest point, not as secure as the strongest one.
Well, of course, the chain is as strong as its weakest link, right? But you could actually automate some of this stuff, because you're absolutely correct. If you have a default policy is to prohibit that user from utilizing that service until that access is restored, you could actually utilize a LLM with RAG on top of it. So it's
possible,
so
and
it
it's
could
good.
actually analyze his behavior previously and become very fine-tuned on what is unusual behavior in terms of hours, in terms of services accessed, or in terms of, for example, IPs and certain sequences happening. But AI is very good at that, and if you actually close it, if you run it within your own on-prem, plus you do RAG, which is actually fed information about the user. For example, log files are being constantly dumped into it and evaluated. Yeah, you can actually make a quite effective user behavior analytics platform that rarely has, how could I say, fake alerts happening.
True.
Yeah.
False positive. Yeah.
For example, just
False positive,
it's not very related, but a good example of anomaly detection, which is bulletproof. If you're using credit cards, and if you're using credit card in a physical location, there is a concept which is called impossible travel. So if your credentials are stolen, and if you're using a credit card here in Warsaw, and someone will try to use the same credit card 1 hour from this moment of time, somewhere in Mexico, the system will track that it's impossible to travel from here to there in this period of time, so it's definitely 100% invalid. The system is working for, I don't know, probably 30, maybe 40 years, and this is bulletproof. And it is widely adopted because there is no false positives. Yes, that's. I wouldn't say that this is an exact one because I would debate with you around it a little bit, but it's a kind of long discussion.
But that's not a regular case. When we're speaking about just an employees, we suppose that they use personal accounts for an access. And like Dima mentioned, for credit cards, we have the same for personal accounts, and modern identity provider allow you to detect also login attempts from different locations. And if they both were successful, you will be blocked. It's like a standard case. But if you have some kind of service accounts, you have some kind of automation, you for sure can set up exceptions for such cases and avoid blocking for such situations. And I want to also share with you one quite interesting case related identity management. When, for example, you have cloud keys and you can use them in order to get an access, like we had in our cases that cloud keys were compromised. And if you will go in your cloud provider and revoke this keys, the attacker can still be able to use temporary keys that he will able to get using this case. So you steal the keys, you get temporary keys using them, and then you can touch different services. But until these temporary keys will be expired, even if your original keys were suspended, blocked, you will still keep an access. And one thing only you can do is just enforce blocking policy. You need to block credential, you need to assign blocking policy in order to avoid temporary credentials will be used. And that's all about the complexity, yes? And that's all about that shared responsibility model is definitely shared responsibility model. And we as a clients have our own gaps, and I believe that cloud providers has their gaps as well. And we need to work closer together in order to avoid them in the future.
Time for a question, Zara?
Yeah.
It seems like Mike there, sorry.
That's some question about bulletproofs for cards.
Yeah.
For example, it works 40 years ago just because we have only located terminals in stores, in some grocery stores, and it works fine. But right now we have a lot of credit cards transactions across the world with online stores. And sometimes we have false positives with some blocked accounts. And that's point for we can't we can have some bulletproof concepts and some safe environment when we not going forward. So if a company stay at the same place, it may be some have some same safe state. But if you want to go forward, like any innovative company, you should hire another company to protect you right now.
That's a very, very good comment. I'm absolutely 100% agree with you. Whenever you're telling that you are secure or you're 100% bulletproof, it is applicable for that moment of time.
Yes.
If you're asking for, I don't know, external auditors to do an audit, security audit, or you're asking pen test company to stress test your environment. They're giving you a report, you're fixing your issues from this report. You can mitigate everything. You could tell, like, we hired highly skilled professionals. They found all the holes. We patched all the holes. We are good now. The key word in the sentence is now. Because one more commit later, you have no idea how good you are. You can still be that bulletproof good, but you can be terribly, terribly wrong. So it's not about the state, it's more about the process, it's more about the path. Like summarize, there is no destination, the path itself matters. It's hard. It's simply hard. If it was easy, none of us gonna be paid for it, or at least asked to do partial stuff, because we don't have illusions that we are good. We are trying to do our best, and that's what we can do.
So hand raise there. Could you please pass the mic? To the folk behind. Yeah, it was the first one. Good.
I have a question about current situation of shared responsibility model between customer and clients. As in the previous panel, we see about some vulnerability about CLI in the cloud providers.
Yeah.
In some implementations from cloud service provider side, can some vulnerabilities and vectors can prevent it in the beginning side, because when we delete some resources, they're asking about asking about some name of the resource again. The action was dangerous and harmful actions. So I think my thinking about that, there can be some implementations and more restrictions on cloud service provider side to strict customers to be on.
We're actually slowly going into it, I'd say, because, for instance, in some popular cloud providers, there are a lot of notifications saying that don't use long-lived credentials, don't use legacy ways of defining permissions, don't use the wildcards. You're using wildcards. Are you sure that you're doing the right thing, etc.? So they're definitely moving to it. Yeah, and this is a good intention, I'd say.
Because I have worked with one of the biggest house manufacturing clients,
Right.
and in big enterprises, we couldn't add new policy to existing role or in groups with taking approval
Ooh.
from another team, and
Okay.
you need to create long characters of policies for restricting some actions of new access requests. It's a bit hard to implementation cost of also, and we can.
It is. That's why we have a job here.
It's like you cannot try to you can, and it's like human nature to try to force someone to do their job better, like to ask cloud providers to provide good defaults, to, I don't know, deprecate non-secure methods, to try to warn you if you're trying to do something harmful. But in the end of the day, like, if you are configuring something, if you are doing something, if you're owning, you should be accountable for it. You shouldn't tell, oh no, this is a bad CSP vendor which didn't tell me not to do it. It's immature. You need to be accountable for your actions. Cloud providers, for many cases, they do their best, because I think no one will be happy if by default, for example, AWS gonna be very, very strict, because you wouldn't enjoy your pet projects on weekends, because it's going to be extremely difficult for you to spin something up. You do not want your, I don't know, small pet project to be as secure as your production environment for your organization. You want it to be fast. You want to enjoy your pass here and you do not want people to enforce you. You can click, yes, I acknowledge I'm doing bad. This is an intention. I'm having fun. And that's all right. But if you're telling that they need to be very strict and very secure, you're gonna pay for that with a comfort, with convenience or something like that. It's always about trade-offs.
All right, I think we have time for 2 last questions.
Yeah,
Lucas?
just
Next
one.
address here. Cool. Go for it.
Just easy question, I think.
Yeah.
In your team, in your company,
Right.
because security is really important right now,
Okay.
yeah, how many percentage you invest in your engineering team to be secure? And do you think enough or not?
It actually depends on what we understand under security investments. So for me personally, security investment in education of my engineers of my company, of my department. And I am forcing myself, to be honest, because sometimes it's difficult to provide something new, to host at least security meeting, or well, not security, engineering meeting which touches the security at least once a month. So educational investment is huge. If we're talking about the engineering investment, heavily depends on the time, heavily depends on the thing we're working on, and a lot of other variables. Answering the last part of the question, if I think that it's enough, well, based on my experience, it's never enough. And that's pretty much it. That's the whole answer. It's never enough, but we're doing our best.
I want to hit here one important moment. When we're talking about investments, it's really crucial to understand when we're building security of your, when you're doing security of your product, who are your customers? If you deal with big enterprise companies, the expectations are high. You will get high bills, you will get high revenue from these companies, and your investment will be significantly higher rather than you have small, medium businesses as a clients, and the expectations related to security will be lower. And that means that you will not invest so much in security team, in the tooling they have, and all other stuff in order to support all security controls that are in place.
Right.
I will also answer this question because it's a nice one. And if you're like, you asked it, I started thinking about it, and I didn't found my peace about this answer. I wish we, like, it's always not enough. I couldn't say that we are not doing good job because like we don't have security as a kind of very dedicated narrow area, and this is not security, this is security. Security starts with how you operate as a company. It's about like culture, it's about the team, it's about how you're doing code reviews, who is able to push commit to main branch, who has access to CI/CD environment, how you are managing least privileges principle and stuff like that. So we are trying to follow best policies, best principles. We're a security company. We invest in a lot of it, like, because it's our reputation. And if we are not secure a security company, who will be talking to us? Yeah. But even with this deliberate effort, with this high level of understanding of what's going on, what are the implications and things like that, time to time, I want to be honest, we are finding something. I'm very happy that we are finding something like early on staging environment during pull request and stuff like that. And we are fixing it, not because we are reckless, but because we're humans. We do mistakes, and there will be mistakes. And no matter how much effort you put there, it's going to be something. You want it to satisfy one of your customers. You want to close your release. You want to go home and see your family, and you want to push commit button. And yeah, you just need to be weak for a moment, and that's it. So it's never enough.
Okay, thank you.
Never enough. And the last one, please. Yes. It happens.
Thank you very much. I just had a comment regarding the things that Dima talked about regarding the responsibility of cloud vendors. And just from my point of view, cloud vendors are definitely not doing enough at the moment for popularizing security. And I think the better they do in making security popular and making security visible, the best. The thing that storage and S3 is being publicly accessible when you are creating this a bucket until 2023. It's like it's a mess. It should not be that way. And the amount of vulnerabilities and the amount of attacks that happened because of it, it's like tremendous thing. It's
I
not
will
like
I will
2023.
allow myself to disagree with you a little bit, because if you are in this industry for a while, you remember how clouds, they appeared on a landscape. They were like, their selling speech was, you will not need to care about bare metal. You will not need to order servers. You will not need to care about how they're going to be delivered and who is going to manage it, who is going to put it in a rack and all this stuff. It's going to be easier for you. And they made things easier. And many startups, many companies, they spinned up because of this easiness. But then something interesting happened. They were selling that you're going to be able to spin things up on your own. 5 years later, we have DevOps who we are paying tons of money for doing this stuff. So from something which is supposed to be very easy, very convenient, we've got to the point when it's very complex and complicated, and we're paying this price. We are getting very sophisticated, very flexible things, but they became complex and complicated. And it's very difficult. Like, I'm trying to put myself into their shoes. It's very difficult to provide good defaults. Maybe the effort is not enough, but I encourage you to look on the other side. Like, there are many use cases when you do not need security, when you would like to spin up a pet project, when you are participating in a hackathon on a weekend, when you would like to do some kind of quick experiment, quick and dirty. And if you don't have it, if you are trying to fast rewind to 25 years ago, it was simply impossible. You cannot spin like Docker container in a cloud under 10 minutes. You need server, you need agreement, you need shipment, you need all this stuff. So you're gonna stop on idea point, and now you can proceed and build something over it. So it's for sake of speed, for sake of easiness, and you are also paying for it.
Yeah, but it's a classic attack and defense issue here. So basically, long time ago, yeah, we had like a passwords, literally saying password. Yeah, okay, we had this issue, but now we are not there. We have complicated environments, and we are taking care of our complicated environments. That's why, if it's easy for us, if it's default for us to be in a secure environment, to have a secure, secure defaults, as you call it, it would basically like easier our life much more. So we won't need to educate people to be secure if we have secure by default.
This
I mean,
is a
we will,
really,
of course,
really great
but-
words to end this discussion, to be honest. Mostly for the time basis, not because of the any other ones, but it's finally time. I will give my 2 vouchers, one for Pavel, gentlemen there, and one for you, and my colleagues will make their choices. And I believe we have only 8 minutes to end up everything. So thank you very much for attending. Thank you very much for choosing us over the Capture the Flag challenge, and I hope you see you again here.
Thank you, guys. Great discussion.